I'm going to just mute that. And then lastly, Dina, we've invited you in here. Dina, could you quick introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dina Ferreris. I live in the St. Canyon region here in Oregon, and we were impacted by the September 2020 wildfire. The specific one in Oregon in our area was the Beachy Creek and Lion's Head fires. In our area, we lost just right at 700 homes, and that's across several communities. It is a river canyon area up and down a river here, and we span 2 counties and multiple municipalities. So we've got a unique experience in that we're not just a really, what am I trying to say, focused neighborhood or city. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm just going to kick us off with a little introduction and kind of give you the what we're hoping to share with you today. And I'm going to share my screen in a moment. My background before the fire, listen, we all have backgrounds before our fires, right? Not all of us were doing this before, managing rebuilds. I know my friend Jeff, he was a he still is a commercial insurance agent. And Vita, she works at a law firm, and we all do different things. I was working as a public school educator. I'm trained as a librarian, and I've done a lot of work in communications. And so we all come to this recovery work with what we already know and what our skills we already have. And all of us really do have skills to leverage. And it's amazing as you see them at work. And so I want to remind you of that. And one of the things that I raised my hand immediately and said, we need a communication strategy. We need a plan for how to do communications. And so, because as a person who is an educator and a person who's actually trained as a librarian, I realized that we need, especially in times of emergency, we need vetted information that we can trust, because there's so many different players there sharing information, maybe trying to sell us stuff, maybe trying to, maybe just not understanding because it is so complex. And so what we need to do is definitely have a plan from the beginning to vet information, share information, and be able to correct information, and then deliver it in the most accessible way. And as leaders, all of you have joined this because you're leading something somehow. You're leading your household through this. You're leading your neighborhood. You're leading your town. You're leading your county. You're leading your organization in this work. And so as leaders, you need to always have hope in your message somehow. Because if people don't think they can come back and they don't think it's possible, it's going to be very hard to get everybody to do it. And so you also need to have it, your messaging and your words be a place for invite collaboration and mutual support. And when you share information, you're going to be able to do it courageously, but honestly. So you're going to listen. Communication deals with both listening and sharing information. And sometimes you're going to make a bold statement, and then sometimes you're going to honestly say, I was wrong. So being able to have that be part of your messaging strategy, realizing that information does change, situations change, resources change. So being able to come back and make corrections and make those corrections visible as well is important. And when I'm talking about communicating, I'm talking about all these different entities and people that are involved in pulling off the recovery. So of course, fire survivors I have at the top of this list, those people that need to rebuild their lives in their homes. But the neighbors nearby who didn't lose everything are part of this picture too. And the community at large a little bigger. They want to know how they can help, and they want to know what the situation is. And it also has impacted them in a great way. Their city's not working in the same way it was before. So you need to be able to communicate with these different groups in different ways.
Hey, stop.
Also, city and county staff are essential to making this happen. And you want to have a collaborative relationship with them rather than a combative relationship with them. You want to be honest, you want to advocate for sure, but you also need to collaborate. You've got recovery staff and volunteers from out-of-town organizations and local organizations, faith-based organizations. Your schools can be essential hubs for communication. Also business, and believe me, the building community, the trade community, who's going to actually hammer those nails. They're important people to have somehow in your communications framework. And philanthropic groups who can donate money, because it takes a lot of money to rebuild. And then for your physical and mental health and also social services, these agencies that help with healthcare and human services are important. And lastly, but not least, is the media. You need to be able to tell your story because it's a long road to recovery, and you have to keep those stories fresh and in the public sphere so that people know that it's not over and you still need help, because it takes years to recover. And so I just wanted to say that it's important to make those clear communications a priority. Maybe you're going to try something and it didn't work. That's okay, but at least make it a priority to make clear communications part of your recovery plan, which includes listening. How am I getting information and listening to fire survivors and listening to those people who are making decisions, but how am I also sharing information with them too? And using multiple modes. Not everybody's going to have internet that works today. Not everybody is going to speak English. Not everybody is going to look on social media. So make sure you're using multiple modes to reach the audience that you need to reach. Information might change, so you need to make corrections. And you may need to get information out there, and it doesn't have to look fancy. It doesn't have to be a high, Madison Avenue agency who's designing this. It can be simple, but it should be correct. And those are the things that I just wanted to share about just an overall approach to communications. Dina, you had your hand up.
Sorry, I wasn't seeing your full deck on your, so I'm sorry.
Oh,
but if I interrupted.
I can definitely share it. It was pretty simple.
Thank you.
It was very simple, but I was attempting. I'm working on multiple laptops simultaneously. So
I was trying to text you,
things
Pam.
interesting.
So sorry, everybody. I was trying to text her and message her to let her know that we were seeing like part of a deck and we're talking about communications. And
yeah, isn't that ironic?
Yeah, just so you know, we caught that, and a good example of how we're all always doing our best. And sometimes it doesn't look like you mean it to. So
I know.
Right on down. So, thank you, Dina. Same.
That is awesome. I actually love that example. And I am going to admit right now that that was a failure of me putting the slide deck on there. But it was actually simple and not very earth shattering. I just said exactly what the slide said. So I will share it with you. Really, we're here to hear from these folks. And I just wanted to also add that unfortunately, Jenny Campbell from Los Angeles, from the Woolsey fire at just a day ago, had to.
Here, I see her. Right
there. She just couldn't confirm to present. I think that she wasn't sure, but I'm glad that she's here. So thanks, Jenny, for being here. And if you want to add any comments in the session, just let us know. But I'd like to start out with my neighbor, Jeff. And Jeff, you were so pivotal in our community's recovery, and you use communications really effectively. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Jeff, if you could share.
Just share our story a little bit. Yeah, basically what ended up happening was, as Pam said, I'm a commercial insurance agent, which means I insure businesses, and a lot of those are contractors. So when the fire happened, I kind of had I had a knowledge base of three of the different things, right? So I had a knowledge base of insurance, I had a knowledge base of construction, and a knowledge base of losing my house. So I felt kind of compelled to do what I could. and try to help people. And what I ended up doing was putting together a panel discussion at the local junior college about 3 weeks after the fire, maybe 2 weeks after the fire, with some insurance people, city representatives, builders, to kind of give an overall idea of what the process was going to look like. Because I'm sure, like most of you, none of us had ever built a house from the ground up before. We had no idea what it entails. There's a lot of talk about like, oh, once we get our land cleared by FEMA, we can just start building. And obviously, that's not the process. And so that happened, and I went home that night, and I was sat there, and I was like, I did my good deed, and I want to focus on our rebuilding our lives, and I'm done. And then Facebook messages started to pop up, and when's the next meeting, and when can we get more information on this or that? And I was like, oh man, okay. I'm friends with the Sonoma County Supervisor, James Gore, who represents our area and a large area of fire affected communities here in Sonoma County. And he had kind of co-opted this idea he saw after the Jerusalem fire in Lake County, which was a block captain. There it was literally blocks. It was like, all right, these 5 houses are all going to have a representative. And he took it to a smaller area here in Wiki up in Larkfield, and did the same kind of thing. But again, it was smaller. Our neighborhood had 1,300 homes. So, I mean, if you want to average that, over 5,000 people were affected, right? And or close to 5,000 people. And basically, we had a conversation like, do you think this will be helpful in Coffee Park? And I was like, absolutely, it'll be helpful, because we don't have, we're all doing the same things, right? There's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of people duplicating efforts. So we organized another meeting at a local concert hall here, and a few hundred people showed up, and we literally just said, all right, here's a giant map of the neighborhood. And it looked like 2 little kids with markers on the ground. And we just laid on the ground and drew a line. Like, all right, if you're west of this street, go over there. If you're north of this street, east of this street, you go over to that side. And then said, raise your hand, and if you want to be a leader in that area. And that was kind of the impetus of it all, and the starting point. And what ended up happening is we ended up growing into an organization with a complete and total representative process, where people knew who the representatives, the block captains or the area captains of their home were. And it ended up doing 3 specific things. The first thing that is the most important thing, as Pam was saying, is communication. And it provided us the ability to communicate efficiently and effectively up and down from the city. So if there was a ground level issue with the city or builders or state or whomever, a homeowner could come to the block captain could come to the organization. And we did end up incorporating, becoming a 501c3. And then we could effectively communicate that to whoever it was. And when I say different levels, I mean, majority of it was the city, obviously, but I mean, we just had issues with state, we had issues with the federal government, with the postal service. We had a small little issue we had to fight through. And it became this thing of, when our organization comes to somebody, they know we're actually representing that many people, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, because we proved that through our work product. And then the same way, top down, basically, if the city had a new ordinance or a new, hey, we wanted to let everybody know that we're waiving all fees for ADUs, because not everybody is local, right? So not everybody's reading the paper. Sometimes it's only like next door Facebook or Slack that people are seeing things. But we were able to get, a lot of communication, a lot of ways to communicate, whether it's email, cell phone number, those kinds of things. And they'd say, hey, we want to get this information out. We'd be able to get that information out to everybody, thousands of people at the same time. And they knew that. So it became this really effective process to go up and down for everybody. And the second part that Pam touched on is advocacy. When we brought a problem, right, and we needed a solution, they knew, as I said, we were representing a certain amount of people, and that it wasn't just, one person saying, I have this one issue. Because when you come as a group versus an individual, there's a legitimacy and a power to that. And we were able to do that, a lot of times directly. And then sometimes if we had issues, like one of the ones was the Postal Service, you have somebody or a few people that are good on camera or that feel comfortable in front of camera, and you can go and be in the press. And you know, one of the things that we always said was, all we want is what we had. We don't want anything more. We don't want to make money off of this. We don't want to, you know, increase our wealth. We just want back what we had. So when there were impediments to that and we advocated for ourselves, people care about that, you know, like, hey, fire victims, fire survivors are being victimized right now by this organization or this law or ordinance, and it's preventing them from getting back what they had, because that wasn't our choice. We didn't sell our homes. We didn't walk away from our homes. It was taken from us. And so that always helped. And we were able to help advocate for everything from just minor changes in codes to passing state laws. And then the third thing, which I was not the expert on, Pam is much more of an expert on this, is the therapy portion of it. And there's a lot of mental health issues that happen. I don't like saying PTSD because I don't think that post-traumatic stress is a disorder. I think it's completely natural and a completely common thing to go through. You don't have it. If you have post-traumatic stress, you don't have a disorder. You're a human being. That's going to be traumatic for anybody. If you don't have post-traumatic stress, then you probably do have an disorder, right? If you're not getting affected some way emotionally by this, then I'd be concerned. And it's one of those things where when you're going through this together as a group, it helps you feel like, you know, you're not alone. There's other people going through this. This is not something that you're suffering through by yourself. And then two, there's nobody that knows what you're going through except for people that have gone through it with you or are going through it at the same time. And so one of the examples we use is there was a fire, I believe it was in Lake County in the early summer of the next year, that was sending smoke our way. And it was very triggering for a lot of people. And, you know, there's different things that trigger different people. Me, one thing, if you really want to upset me, 70-mile-an-hour winds, I cannot sleep. That is something that, you know, I can look at flames, I can look at pictures that won't affect me. 70-mile-an-hour winds, that'll mess with me. And, you know, when those kind of things start to happen, people want the comfort of other people. When people are having issues with builders or insurance, and they just want to commiserate, having other people around them going through the same thing helps. And so one of our members started Wine Wednesday. And it was where a group got a bunch of camping chairs and some wine and sat in the street in front of their lots and commiserated. And when I say Wine Wednesday, it's WHINE. They would sit there and whine to each other about their plot in life, because it made them feel better to talk to people that knew what they were going through. And it's important. And lastly, before I end, when people say your neighborhood's gone, most people think of the physical neighborhood, but neighborhood's more than just physical. It's the you know, the person you borrowed a cup of sugar from, the daycare down the street your kids went to when they were younger, and the communal aspect of a neighborhood is gone because everybody's spread out through the county, state. In our scenario, I remember collecting contact information from people that were in Maine and Hawaii, so literally spanning the furthest reaches of the United States. And you're everywhere, and you can't just go to the local park or the, you know, Starbucks or coffee shop or whatever and see the same people you saw on a regular basis. That doesn't happen anymore. You're amongst strangers. It's like going to, you know, transferring high schools mid-year. All of a sudden you're around a bunch of people you don't know in an area you're not familiar with, and everyone you do know is somewhere else. And so having that aspect, that communal aspect of coming back to your neighborhood or getting together for coffee, wine, whatever, is extremely important for your mental health. That's kind of my
one more thing about what I wanted to say about Jeff was so skilled at and just prioritized is keeping those human stories like he just described, not just amongst us fire survivors, but he actually shared that with our local paper. And the local paper had a regular reporter assigned to our neighborhood to just tell those human stories, but also those maybe more technical stories of the things we were facing. Just a couple notes, a minute about that, Jeff.
Yeah, it was just it was building relationships. So I think it was through Twitter. I posted something, and a reporter reached out to me, and it was something about the rebuild. I can't imagine, or before the lot clearing. I think what I did is I went and when I visited my house, I collected ashes from my son's room and put them in a jar, and just, I don't know, it was an emotional thing. And then somebody got reached out to and was like, hey, do you know a fire survivor that'll talk on camera? They're like, oh, call Jeff. And, it just kind of snowballed from there. And the press, same thing. Does anybody, hey, we heard, you'd be willing to talk about this. And for me, telling my story I can tell my story about my loss really easily. No hesitation. I don't get choked up because I've told it so many times. It's been a very cathartic experience to do that so many times. And it's helped me personally doing that, but it's also been a thing where when you get these relationships where you have cell phone numbers of reporters and TV and print, and something pops up, right? So one of the things that we really had a heartbreaking issue with was there was a contract. This is a little slightly tangential, but FEMA's contracts are on a certain timeline, and then they have to be renegotiated and bid again. And during that bid process, somebody appealed the bid process, and everything stopped. So there's a week where nobody's lots were getting cleared. And you can imagine how that feels when you're just sitting there and you're just like, nothing's happening. And you start getting really like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We were like, F this. So we started calling reporters, and reporters came out and calling them like, this is not okay. You're arguing over money while we're losing time on rebuilding our lives and going through trauma. And so it kind of expedited that process a little bit. And they said, okay, well, I think they ended up extending the contract for like a week while it was renegotiated. But that's the kind of thing you need to do because, to be frank, people are going to have a soft spot for the scenarios that we're all in. And it's not exploitation, but it's taking advantage of that to get what you're entitled to, which is rebuilding your life in a timely and efficient manner. And so in doing that and having those relationships, they're worth a lot because they do help your community rebuild because it shines a spotlight on issues.
If I can back up dance that too, that when we started our organization, because Jeff and Pamela and the Coffee Park people were so good at how to utilize the press in a very positive way, it alerted us to a big, like over $500,000 need that they had that we then could help them fill. And it's not just good for the fire survivors, it's also good for the funders and your partners in this space to figure out how to help you. And it was good even for the paper. They won a Pulitzer over it. And so and they continue to go back to Jeff, go back to Pam, go back to the Coffee Strong, and a couple of other neighborhoods, primarily Coffee Strong, because they've been so good about utilizing the press over a long period of time when no one's paying attention anymore. They can still get that attention, and it's really smart and helpful for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think one of the pivotal aspects in the partnerships and being in the press is we were never angry and screaming and yelling and saying, but it was more of a like, we're upset because we think this is wrong. Do you think this is right or wrong? And I think most of the people were like, yeah, that's not right. So we need to fix that. And that kind of helped us. And just being like, hey, we don't think this is right. Can you help us?
Totally. Trying to reduce those barriers and trying to bring people in to help you break them down. So I agree. Thank you so much for sharing that. If you have any questions for Jeff, feel free to put them in the chat. I'd love to transition to Vida Iskandar. Vida is a fellow fire survivor. I consider one of my fire family. And she didn't come from the Coffee Park neighborhood, but was a warrior in her neighborhood, which is on the other side of Highway 101. And Vida is going to talk a little bit about how block captain system really worked well for her as well, but also some of the things that she did with blogging and listservs and things to really help folks. Vida.
Hi, I'm Vida. Thanks, Pamela. Yeah. I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm so sorry for why you're here, but I'm grateful you are. And I also want to support and reiterate everything that Pamela and Jeff has said. Everything I say builds on top of that. And I will try not to repeat. I think I have two things I come from this that I take away from this fire is trust your gut, because every time I didn't listen to it in these past 4 years since the fire, I've been wrong. And seems silly, if you build it, they will come. And that will become clear in a second. The model that Jeff talked about is a private model. And I think a lot of people in your areas might have to do that because you may not have the local government structure to help form neighborhood groups the way that we had, because we had district supervisors, county supervisors that helped us do that. We also had to fight because sometimes there was a jurisdictional issue where the jurisdiction that really was in charge of our area couldn't or wouldn't help us. And so we had to actually go to somebody who was not really supposed to be helping us. And one of their things was, well, we asked fire survivors if they want us to help them with a group, but they say no. And I said, well, that's because they're calling you in crisis. And they can't think about more work. You have to create the group and they will come. So I helped convince them of that. And guess what? My neighborhood showed up. Standing neighbors, it was our standing neighbors that helped us create our neighborhood group, because they had the time and the energy to go down to the county office, get voter rolls and get email addresses, and started email groups going. So there's a lot of resources out there that you don't realize are what you need. We had several groups. We had 3 district groups plus Coffee Park. And for those of you who are trying to lead a bunch of people, I strongly suggest, well, first of all, I hope you're not in an area that has more than one group, because that's awful. But if you do, attend each other's meetings. Not all of you, but you know what I mean. Because the things that I learned in another district's meeting, I would bring back to mine. So for example, District 4 was months ahead in rebuilding. So they knew about issues that we didn't know about yet. So we could prepare for them a little bit. I want to reiterate this idea of getting vetted information from government agencies, local government building, whatever, as a group, not individual traumatized homeowners having to go and find answers and getting different. No, you have to address this as a group. And then because of it's a representative system, this block captain system, then the self-appointed volunteer representatives would then report back to the neighbors, because not everybody's going to go to these weekly meetings. The other thing that happens is that these groups in these meetings become a form of emotional support. And I think it's a side effect, and it's really, really important. My particular story is I needed information and I couldn't figure out where to get it, because the group didn't come together right away. And I just had to go and look and look and look and look and look and look and try, cast a wide net, talk to everybody. You just have to keep trying. What ended up happening with in the insurance group, so I had a listserv for State Farm claimants that grew to about 300 people. Is thanks to United Policyholders. It was at their first seminar workshop that they said, hey, everybody gather and connect by insurance group and try to form a group by insurance group. I'm like, great, that's a great idea. I love being organized. Who's going to do it? Well, there was 50 of us standing there, all looking at each other going, who's going to do it? And I guess it was me. Same thing with my neighbors and trying to get information on building. I wanted somebody to put all the information together and organize us. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting.
Stop.
And I guess it was me. So that's what happens. But I want to put together a website. I don't think, I'm not interested in web design, blah, blah, blah. But what I wanted to do was, it actually started out something for me. When I wanted to have a clearinghouse. If somebody said, what did so-and-so say at that building meeting? I wanted to be able to bring it up. These are the notes. These are the flyers. So that was what the website was about. It just was a clearinghouse for those sorts of things. And all over my website was things change. Keep checking back. Keep checking with the original source. Things change. When I was moderating my insurance group, I set a tone of, we are posting two kinds of information: factual information from United policyholders and our personal experiences and how those two mesh. And somehow everybody got on board with that. And it became a really useful thing. I do think that people were able to get a lot more from the insurance claims as a result of not just my group, but anybody who was in a group and could talk to each other about their claims experiences. I think got a lot more from their insurance claims experiences. And so when I say build it, they will come, I made a website. I didn't know I was going to look at it, but apparently people did. I started this State Farm claimants group. I don't know, 300 people. I convinced my supervisor to try to do this neighborhood group for us. People showed up. And I think that's what I have to say right now.
I think the message you're saying, Vida, is that, and I'm seeing this, first of all, those of you who are here from Boulder, welcome. I know we've said that earlier, but if you didn't catch that, we're really glad to be able to have you here. And I see it emerging in your Slack. That's beautiful that the people who took that step forward, like Vida did, and set up a Slack for folks who were impacted by, and you invited some people in like us. And when the time is right, you can kick us out, okay? Your Slack channel doesn't have to always have the world in it. And I want to make sure you know that too. You need safe, closed spaces for your neighborhood to talk about things together without everyone else chiming in. That's important too. So you can really just talk to each other. But you're going to have to come together at some point and decide like who are the identifiable groups in there and how you're going to move forward, how you're going to collectively organize this, because it won't happen, like Vida said, 50 people looking at each other. We want to do it, but no, somebody's going to end up stepping up. And I know you're going to do it. I know there's already people in there who will do it. And you never want to ask somebody, will you manage a website for the next 5 years? But you could do it for the next 6 months and then hand it off to somebody else. Make it easy to edit. And you don't have to be a web developer to do it. Make it easy to hand off to somebody when you need a break. That's one thing I want to say about that.
Yeah, and Pam, if I could just add two things. With spinning off of what Vida said, in our fire, there was pretty much 4 distinctive groups affected. So there was Coffee Park, the Flatlanders. There was the people on the hill, Fountain Grove and Hidden Valley. There was the unincorporated neighborhoods. And then there was the more rural individuals. And so like us in Coffee Park, we couldn't bring like Fountain Grove into ours because there was completely different sets of issues, and especially with the county, right? So we're dealing with the city, they're dealing with the county, but you need to have relationships with any different groups and cross-reference, because there's a lot of information we got from Vida that we didn't know. And it wasn't like, oh, let's have joint meetings or whatever, but it was like, you know, whether it was Pam or one of our other members, you know, emailing Vida or calling and be like, hey, have you heard about this? What do you know about that? Oh yeah, we had this X, Y, and Z, and vice versa. That's very important.
Yeah.
And then in terms of organizational and manpower, who's going to do it? You'll be surprised. I mean, I can only speak for Coffee Strong, but you know, I was a commercial insurance agent. Pam was a librarian. We had an electrician. We had a guy who does part-time bookkeeping, but his main source of income is choreographing sword fights for theater. And we had somebody that works,
a lot of teachers, yeah.
Wastewater engineers, like stuff like that. And you'd be surprised what they will latch on to. Like, I care about this one subject. And all you do is you say, great. Because if you don't care, awesome. You go take care of that. Like, you're the person, and just emboldened, because you never know what's going to trigger somebody's interest in the rebuild. So, yeah, I mean, obviously people have specialties, right? So when it came to like ensuring our organization, I was the guy because that's what I do, right? But there were other things that people specialized in and were very good at that had nothing to do with their professions, that had nothing to do with their personal interest, but it was something that they just latched onto. So always, I think you'd be surprised who steps up to do certain things.
I see a lot of people that hold on, Pam, 1 second, on this call that we know were our emergent leaders. And I just really want to do a shout out for all of you who just stepped up, from Jenny to Dina to, there's so many of you on this call that we have worked with or know that you were not doing this before and you saw a need in your community. And one of our best pieces of advice is support your emergent leaders. Like, they are amazing and they will help you. And it's a big, heavy load for all of us. So share that load and communicate. And what Pam said in the beginning, but boy, do we love all of you and salute you for stepping up into a difficult long-term space. Totally.
And speaking of that, I want to introduce Dina Ferris, who's here, and her superpower was fundraising and so many other things too. But her group up in Santiam Canyon in Oregon, which was part of that whole like Labor Day fires of 2020 that decimated so many areas. And she immediately was successful in doing some fundraising. And what I really find interesting is she and her group just reevaluated communications after it's been over a year and is kind of doing a reset. And I'm really fascinated by what that entailed. Like, a year later, let's think about this again. And Dina, can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Sure. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share what's working well and all the things that didn't work well. Right. And the space and grace to admit that openly. So I want to start, like so many others, our friends that are here with us from Colorado, our hearts are broken for you in a really special way. And it's just, it pierces to know how raw that must still be feeling for you and will for a while. So this After the Fire group, I think the first conversation I had with Jennifer and Pamela was Zoom. And I think they were the first people after several months that actually opened the conversation with that empathy, that sympathy, really is what it was. And so that moved me in such a way. And so thank you for that. And it's nice to be reminded that you're not alone. So all that said, I have no background in communications, and we were really fortunate in our area to have a robust on the ground network of nonprofits, and our local hospital, Santiam Hospital, had a group of kind of mobilized, if you will, case management team in the area that were on the ground already because of COVID. So they were going out into neighborhoods and into the rural areas and helping people that were isolated or needed some special assistance during that time. So when the fires hit, we knew that was going to be our point spot. And by we, I mean the community just fell into the hospital structure for that response. So we were really fortunate to have a robust individual needs program that just morphed and evolved into what a fire response would be. So these organic conversations that we're hearing from Jeff and from Vita were happening. And a lot of them were happening on social media websites. And so we felt like the community was having the right conversations. With my background, and all I knew was we were going to need money. And we were going to need money to help us not just recover, but to organize and to stay organized and to communicate. And so about the month after the fire, a group of us decided that what we wanted or what we envisioned would be helpful. And the best way to describe it was this community watering hole, because we, like so many others, or a network of communities, across several miles, well up into a very remote, canyon forested area, that we needed some way to present information and receive information that was reliable for everyone. And so we started calling this idea, like, we need a watering hole. So people come to the well for different reasons. They might be, offering services to the community. They might be offering volunteer hours. They might be coming for information, or they might be sharing information, but they're all coming to the same place. And that's what we envisioned. So it was the what has now evolved into the recovery.org website. But so this was in the month after the fire. We knew what we wanted. We didn't have the intellectual capital in our group at that time to really figure out how to do it. So we asked for really just a couple $100 from local funders to put up the holding page, if you will, for the website, so we could go out to bigger funders and say, this is what our community needs. And it helped us secure funding. So we kind of did like the baby step, right? We had a landing page. It was rudimentary. We had ideas of how it was going to work in the months in that first month. And I'm here to tell you that it literally took, through, it was really March, April of the following year that we were organized enough to really get it off the ground. We were really fortunate that our county, we have 2 counties here that are responding to the fire, and one it kind of takes the lead. They work together, but our Marion County also saw the need for that, and they were gracious enough, and they understand the community well enough that it didn't need to be a county or government website that was providing this. It really needed to be community based. So they helped us secure a fantastic marketing and PR team, and they're on the call today. So I want to give them some kudos. Yay, Stasia and Jamie with Project LTD. There you go. There's your plug. But by the time that this all married together, we had secured funding for up to 3 years to feed this website. And so the reset that Pamela is talking about really started happening over the summer and late fall. We got a communications team assembled to really begin figuring out what the content was going to be on that website. So while all the organic conversations and groups continue to happen on social media, there's support groups that are being supported through our long-term recovery group, and there's all of these wheels in motion. And so we feel really convicted at this moment in time to provide all of those groups with the interconnectivity that you're talking about. And also to the communications team is also really committed to ensuring that information that we're sharing is vetted and is accurate. And it's kind of up to us right now to make sure that we're doing the very best we can to gather and share information. And the reasons for sharing information continue to evolve, right? Like in the days after the fire, it was, let's get everybody safe and sheltered. And now a year and 3, oh my goodness, however many months It's to keep our stories in front of the greater community so that they know that the recovery is ongoing and it's long and we still need help. We want volunteers. And so that's important to know too. And that it's an evolving response, the communications. And it's laborious, but it's so important. And if we can do a great job of and it's expensive, I think, to do it right and to do it effectively. So I think being bold and just saying we know what we need. We don't know how we're going to get there yet, but we had a great response from some private foundations and again from the counties to help us get where we needed to go. Go ahead.
Can I let you know where we're at right now and give you a quick status report?
Love that.
What happened was on day 2 after the fire, there was this huge text thread going in my neighborhood and a lot of people couldn't join it. So we started a Slack right away and we're up to, I think, maybe 470 members now. And we found out there's 2 other Slacks and we're actively trying to merge them. And what happened? I know nothing. Okay, I'm fat thumbs. I just knew something needed to happen. So about a week ago, somebody in our group, thank you, Raina Pomeroy, identified herself as having experience running communities. And she got someone at Slack to give us paid mode for 2 years, which is great because it's so expensive. And now we're trying to pull everyone in. And we took notes about the need for a website, and she has some connections that can help us design it, but we can definitely we're working on that. But what you said that it took, I feel like 3 weeks, like we already need these things, what's happening? I feel better knowing the timeline. It's probably okay that we're on, even though it feels desperate, like are we keeping up? We're cleaning up the community now because some of the settings I put out there initially were not the best ones, apparently, with her expert advice. And we're trying to have our first meeting talk about a foundation. So I guess keep explaining away all the programs you designed and the timeline you designed them and how you did it, because I have this extreme anxiety that, oh no, we're not doing it fast enough, but probably we're doing all right with the timeline.
You know what, it's going to take time. And I got to say, it can be expensive or not. Unless you consider people like me and a couple of my neighbors who voluntarily did it and didn't charge a penny. That's expensive to me, I guess, because I was a volunteer. Or you could hire somebody to do it. We had somebody offer to provide their server to us. Also, we did miss the boat and we were in Coffee Park, trying to protect privacy and have a custom forum built on various topics. And we didn't use Slack with the community. We only use Slack as the board members. And we missed the boat on that. That was a failure. We had a developer developing that for us custom because we were very careful about privacy. And I know somebody in the chat has asked a question about that. We didn't share anyone's personal confidential information anywhere, but we took so long to build that, it was too late and people weren't going to join it. So the fact that you made that Slack, that's going to always be a backbone, I think, because you did it in the right moment. Now you got to figure out how to leverage that and integrate that with other things that you do, I think.
What you say about,
Sorry, Tanya, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what you've said about having people identify themselves with their expertise, like Mark Riranowski is here. He's talking to the Attorney General already about our underinsurance problems. He's already had a dialogue, and we're already trying to do surveys and get information that he needs. And we're already trying to talk about the media, but we don't have the organization, the people have come forward quite organically, identified issues, identified their expertise, identified their willingness. So Slack has enabled that, but how exactly it's going to shake out with being organized yet is still like, I don't know.
Another thing to do is to understand at the beginning, and if your friend who knows about communities will know this, is if you do organize, which I hope your different neighborhoods can do that, start out by setting norms for the group. How are we going to make decisions? How are we going to run our agendas and meetings? Because you have to, because otherwise you're going to have internal conflict, and that can be very disruptive. So like, oh, we're going to take votes, or we're going to have officers, or we're going to have whatever it is, just set norms.
In the beginning,
There
needs to be some structures and rules. We sort of have seen the issues, we've seen who can do what, and then we work with that, but create some sort of.
I think so.
I
think that will create a safe environment. You need it to be a safe environment, because listen, there's going to be a day where you feel so stressed out and you might like lose your temper or something. And you want to know, like, we have to have grace with each other, but also to have some structure to fall back on is going to be so helpful. Vita, I think you have your hand up. You were going to add something.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Deanna either.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
All of that.
So sorry, just really quick about that. If most of you here probably already know this, but the organizational meeting, the first couple of meetings of any group is going to be a hot mess, and that's okay, and that's what's going to happen. But as the organizer, if you know that's going to happen, and then you start seeing tempers like, we're not working fast enough, how come we haven't answered all of our questions in the first 5 minutes? It's going to happen. So that's just, that's how it is. The other thing about setting tone, whether it's for the listserv, for the Slack, for your groups or whatever, what Pam said is really important. And it does become a safe space. It becomes really obvious when it becomes a safe space. Everybody in Sonoma County understands what a potty mouth I have now, because the spaces were so safe. But the other thing too is sometimes you will invite non-fire survivors into a group. And that's when you have really simple, short conversations about when we have a guest, that's not when it's particularly safe, or when you need to make sure that you schedule certain kinds of meetings without guests, so that people can be free to express whatever they need to express. Because, if you're going to be, well, anyway, you guys understand what I'm saying. Thank you.
Jeff, were you going to add? And then I wanted to get back to Dina, because we kind of do,
Yeah, sorry. The one thing I was just going to say is that what helped us immensely was when we organized as an official nonprofit. So there's two kinds of nonprofits, basically, within a 501c3. You can go the easy route, which is far less burdensome, but you're limited to the amount of money you can take in per year. I think it's $25,000 a year. If you go over that, there's a whole bunch of things. But what that does is, when we incorporated using an attorney who helped us incorporate, it basically gave us a structure for how to run our meeting. Because as an organization, we had to have minutes, we had to have vote on things. So it gave us a little bit of an order, right? So we had agendas that we were going to follow. And then Davita's thing, what it also did is it legitimized us in two ways. So when people wanted to talk about certain things, they would come to us. And that could be anything from, like, we had a guy that really wanted high-speed fiber to be laid in the joint trench after cleanup. So he wanted to come and talk about that. But then it also, and I've said this in the Slack, but it provided an opportunity for the city to have regular representation on their part within our community for the rebuild. So at every single one of our meetings, we had either the deputy director of development, the chief building official, or a city council member, at least one of those, usually two, sometimes all three, there to answer our questions. Like, here's a question we have, and we turn to be like, Gabe, what's your answer for this? Oh, we do that. So that helps in terms of legitimizing your structure, setting expectations, and knowing what you're getting into. That's what worked for us, at least.
Dina.
I love an organic conversation, and let's get questions answered by the people who are in the immediacy of their response. So no apologies needed. And I would just, I'd just like to close, as I see the time, my comments by the words of encouragement. And what I hope you heard is from us, that the nice, shiny, polished website isn't really what you need if you're already talking to each other right now in the immediacy of the moment. And it will come if it's something that you need and that you want. And I would just encourage you to lean on the constructs that exist in your community. If you have a really, our local government's our best shot in these response, like they're the first ones. So they might have the ability to support your communication efforts and help streamline the information that's going out to the community. But it's also, that being said, I strongly value that it has to be community led. It has to be the community talking to each other. We don't need, the city's website to be the only place that we get information. I think that is incredibly important in these types of responses because of the human aspect, because of the recovery and the support that we need is not all just infrastructure, right? So stay the course, don't be rushed. I still feel anxiety that we're too slow and we've missed something, but you'll get there. And I think if you've created a space for people to talk to each other, you're doing fantastic, and the other things will come. And be bold and ask for something that you're not ready to prepare yet. Like, it's okay to go out and ask for money for a website that you need to do later.
Yeah.
In this moment in time, because now's the time to ask when people's hearts are really cued in.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
thanks
We're
for having me.
top of the hour. And I want to thank everybody from here. I think this is a hot, excellent conversation to continue. If you want to just jump online and continue this conversation next week, please email me, Pamela@afterthefireusa.org. I'm also going to send out the recording of this, and you can also just respond to that. Or if you think somebody else would like to join a conversation just to ask questions and continue the dialogue and see some examples, I'm here for that. Let's do it.
We can also have an unrecorded meeting so that you can talk like Vita if you would like to. It's fine. Like, and if you want to connect, if you're like, can I just talk to like a small group or these few people? After, you mind, right, Pam, pulling those few people together? Or I think I might be of service to like the Boulder County, to Marshall Fire community or whatever. Like, we can facilitate smaller groups. And we are not, we're not the government. We do not have to record things so that you can have very honest conversations. That's where a lot of the magic happens. Is when,
we have our paid Zoom account that we want to make available for these conversations. Okay. Yeah. We can schedule it. We can invite folks. Yeah. We just are trying to help you make connections and move forward in the way that makes sense for you. And by the way, we are coming to Boulder the week of February 14, and Jeff Okrepke will be with our group. We're bringing a group of folks from Sonoma County, and we want to meet with folks. And so if you reach out to me and say, hey, I think you should meet with this group or meet with that group, or here's a person you need to connect with, let's get that organized. We haven't set the times and places yet, so let's get that together. Thank you all.
One more thing, Pam, sorry. The people that we're bringing also experience the suburban fires. So that's one of the, we are very intentional on that. So we know that we will be very efficient in our use of our delegates, but we really want to hear from the community, because we totally believe in what Dina said, that recovery should be community-led, community designed, but supported by everybody around you who can just support those leaders in their efforts. So we are bringing suburban fire survivors specifically, and but you can also tell us what you want and need. That is our goal. What do you need? What do you want? And let us help you get to where you want to be.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.